Hi, I'm Rob Cosman. Welcome to my shop. 5.5 jack plane is my go-to plane. I use it probably 85% of the time I'm planing. However, there's more than one version of the jack, and knowing the pros and cons may help you decide which one is best for you. I'm Rob Cosman, and welcome to my shop. We make it our job to help take your woodworking to the next level. If you're new and you haven't subscribed, please do so. Hit the notification bell so you'll receive alerts when we release a new video. And anytime we use a special tool, we'll always leave a description down below. All right, let's get to work. The parameters for this video, I'm speaking strictly about Western style beveled down bench planes. So I'm not comparing them to Eastern planes, nor am I comparing them to low angle. If you're interested in that and why I prefer bevel down versus bevel up, we did a video on that and I'll leave a link below. What we're going to talk about today is strictly Western style bevel down planes, commonly known as bench planes. So the question that's begging to be answered is, what is a jack plane? Now, if you listen to some, the term jack plane means jack of all trades. I don't know if that's actually true or not, but based on my own experience, I'll answer that question for you as we go throughout this video. Over here on my right, we have joiners. These are jacks. Here are your smoothers. We'll talk about this one shortly, but let's focus on the smoothers first. A plane's function is primarily a result or dictated by its length, not so much its width. And I'm going to discount the number 1 and the number 2 because although they're cute and fully functional, really not what you would consider a serious plane. So for smoothers, you have the 3, the 4, and the 4.5, and they range in length. The number 3 is 9.5 inches, and I believe the number 4.5 is 10.25. So there's really not much difference in the length of these at all. The blade, well, you have 1 3/4 inch wide blade on this one, which is the number 3. The number 4, the blade is 2 inches wide, and the number 4.5, the blade is 2 3/8 inch wide. I'm going to jump all the way over to this side, talk about your joiners. The number 8 comes in at 24 inches. The number 7 comes in at 22 inches. This one, the number 8, the blade is 2 5/8 of an inch wide. It's the only plane that uses that width of a blade. The number 7 is 2 3/8, which happens to be the most common size. Now, the number 6, I'm still not going to talk about that just yet. If you look at your jack planes, there's actually 3, although I only have 2 in front of me. There's a 5.25, which has an 1 3/4 inch wide blade. There's the number 5, which is extremely popular with a 2-inch blade. And there's the number 5.5, which I think is the most valuable of the bunch. And that one comes in with a 2 3/8 inch wide blade. So these are your jacks. Now over here you have what's called a 4-plane. This is the number 6. I actually put it into that category because I think it's close enough. If you look at this, I can't remember how long a 5.25 is, but it's not far off. This measures just shy of 14 inches. The 5.5 is 15 inches, and the number 6 should come in at 18. Actually, it's 17 3/4. So there's not a whole lot of difference. In fact, if you were to put these side by side, all these parts are interchangeable. The only difference is a couple of inches extra in the length of the sole. So those are your jacks. This is what we're going to focus on in our video today. Okay, let's start off with the number 5. We're going to go through and analyze length, weight, the reasons why I would or would not recommend the 5, the 5.5, and the 6. And even though I already said this is not considered a jack, I'm going to throw it in that group. I'm now eliminating the 5.25. I don't have one, and I can't think of any reason why you would want one other than the fact that you're trying to fill out the whole series. So if we start off with the 5. Now, why the jack plane in particular? Well, because I prefer to have one plane that will perform almost all of the functions. That means all the smoothing operations, in other words, prepping stock for a final finish, and on the shooting board. And in case you're not familiar, shooting board is an apparatus that is designed to hold the tool, being the plane, and the workpiece at right angles. Right angles this way, and right angles this way, looking at it in plan view. And the function is that you can go in there, and by holding this on its side, you can square up the end of that board, making it extremely accurate, and probably the best way to improve your work with just one device. So we want to make sure that whatever we choose is going to perform very well on the shooting board and is going to be a manageable enough size that you can readily use it and wield it easily on the bench. So starting with the number 5. And I'll give you the very specifics. So from toe to tip or heel, it actually measures 13 7/8 of an inch. The sole of the plane is 2 7/16 of an inch wide. And we'll measure it or weigh it. So it comes in at 6 pounds, 2.71 ounces. So 6.3 pounds, or 6 pounds, 3 ounces. The blade is exactly 2 inches wide. Okay. Now, every brand is going to can be a little bit different in terms of how the lateral adjustment is made and how the advance and retract mechanism is, but the overall functions. We stated the length, we stated the width, we stated the weight. Now, if I was picking a plane, I would be asking myself, why would I want a plane 2 inches in width when I had the opportunity to plane 2 3/8? Now you may think that's not a big deal. However, if you look at the sole and you look at the surface area, ask yourself the question, which one is going to be more stable? Which has a larger footprint? Well, obviously the 5.5. Now, just for comparison's sake, this one was 6 pounds, 3 ounces. The 5.5 comes in at 7 pounds, 2 ounces. So it's almost a full pound heavier. Where's that going to be an advantage or disadvantage? Well, on the shooting board, because you really don't have gravity helping you, when you're planing across the end of a board, you want two things. You want length in front of the blade, because you cannot start back here. There's no way that you're going to line that up and actually meet the end of the board without either missing it or slamming into the end of it. So you have to maintain contact with the sole when you're shooting. Number 2, you want mass, you want some weight. Once you get that thing moving, the heavier the plane, the easier it's going to be to sail through that board, particularly when you start dealing with hardwoods. So weight is actually a big blessing when it comes to a hand plane. Now, what about wielding it? Well, you'll see people who will plane, lift up the plane, set it back down, plane, lift up the plane. I don't go through that cycle. I prefer to keep the board in contact with the wood through the entire stroke, forward and back. Saves me. It prevents you from that starting bump, which means if you set it back down and you clunk it the least little bit, you may change your setting. And when you're pulling a shaving that's less than half a thou in thickness, the slightest jarring of the plane, you could possibly upset that. So, who gets the 5? Well, if you simply cannot handle the weight of a 5.5, then you may want to consider the number 5. Not that much difference in length. Obviously, it's going to be lighter because it's a narrower plane. And people may say, well, it's a lot easier to push 2 inches through than it is 2 3/8. If you know how to properly sharpen, check out my video, 32 seconds to sharp. We'll leave a link below. A sharp hand plane, you're not going to be able to tell the difference between a 2-inch swath and a 2 3/8 if it's properly sharpened. So the only people I would recommend this to is someone who is either small in stature and simply can't handle a heavier plane, or somebody that for some reason believes all the stuff about the number 5 as being your go-to plane. In that case, go ahead and get your 5, but that's not the recommendation coming from me. All right, now let's go, leave the 5.5, we'll save that for last, and let's jump over and have a look at the number 6. Okay, the number 6. Well, it measures 17 11/16, so it's not quite 18. The blade, the body is 2 and just shy of 7/8 of an inch in width. The blade is 2 3/8, and if we weigh this, it comes in at 7 pounds, 14 ounces. So when would we use the number 6? Well, with the extra length and width, it's going, the extra length and weight, it's going to be a little better on the shooting board. With the extra length, it's going to perform the function of flattening a little bit better, and let me explain that. If you were to take something like a 4.5 and compare it to something like a number 7 in terms of flattening a tabletop or a bench top or straightening an edge, this sole is relatively short, which means it is not going to do a very good job of reaching between bumps. Or if you're doing the edge, it's not going to bridge high spots very well, and it's going to have a tendency to ride the surface like this. It may leave it smooth, but not necessarily flat. The longer the sole, the more it will reference off of the high spots, whether it's flattening a bench top or straightening an edge. And although it still requires skill by the user, your ability to get something either straight or flat is going to be enhanced when you're using a long-soled plane like a number 7. So, if you've got this on one side, meaning the smoother, and the jointer over here, obviously a number 6 is going to be more toward the jointer side than it is the smoother side. That's an advantage on something like the shooting board. It's a slight disadvantage on general purpose on the bench. However, I've never found it to be enough of a disadvantage to discourage someone from buying a number 6 or obtaining a number 6. Again, if you're a person of slight stature, then this is probably going to be more than you're going to want to deal with. And again, you're going to go towards the number 5. When we bring the soldiers in for our Purple Heart project, we actually send them home with a smoother, a 4.5, and a number 6. This is close enough to the jointer that it'll do a lot of the functions of the jointer. It may require a little more skill, and I would say at some point you probably still want to get a jointer. But if you're on a limited budget, or you're just trying to cut down the number of planes you actually need to have, then you're probably going to want to lean towards the number 6 as opposed to even a 5.5. Great plane, lots of weight, not too long. I think it's a really good choice, like I said, for those categories if you're wanting to minimize the number of planes that you're going to need. That is your number 6. Okay, so let's save the best for last. This is the 5.5. Now let's get very specific. I'm going to give you the length. This one measures in at right on 15 inches. The width of the sole is 2 13/16, and I'm going to weigh it again. This one comes in at 7 pounds 2 ounces. 2 3/8 inch wide blade. Why do I like it so much? Well, it seems to be just the right size. I always found when I was using this 4.5, the smoother, that you just didn't have the stability up front. You have a relatively small amount of sole directly ahead of the blade, particularly when you're starting and it's going to be something you're planing that's hard. You just don't have a whole lot of stability right there. And that extra, well, what is it? Extra 1.5 inches, I felt really made a difference in terms of keeping that from doing that little jump when you first start your plane. So you might want to think about that if that's been an issue. On the shooting board, I think it's perfect. It's got just the right length and heft. It works extremely well. None of these planes are really well suited for working on their side in terms of where you hold your hand. I end up just kind of jamming this part of my palm into this V-shaped area. And I like to have it right over the widest part of the plane to keep it nice and stable and keep it standing plumb. The rear tote, I think it's just right for an adult male hand. It's, by the way, designed to be a 3-finger, not a 4-finger grip. So typically your index finger sits down here underneath the frog, and that keeps from squeezing your pinky on the bottom side. It's not too big and not too heavy for general planing. It does not have the length that you're wanting for jointing, as evidenced when you compare it to the number 7. So you're still going to need a jointer for those applications. But I clearly think 85, maybe even 90% of the time that I'm using a plane, this is the one that I choose. Right length, right width, just everything about it I really like. Ignoring all the functions that are going on in here, just the overall basics of the plane, I think. And I have to thank David Charlesworth for that, because he really turned me on to this probably 15 years ago. I was a big fan of the smoother, and he talked so affectionately about the 5.5. I tried one, and it didn't take very long before I saw his way. I think it's a fantastic plane, and it should be your first option if you can handle the weight and you're looking for that one plane to get started with. I think this should be it. This number 6 would be a close second. And I'll state it one more time. If you're a small person and you can't handle that weight, then you can look at the number 5. But 5.5, in my book, rules supreme. If you enjoy my method of work and like my style of teaching, click on any one of these videos to help take your woodworking to the next level. Now, I've always said, better tools make the job so much easier. If you click on the icon with the plane and the chisel, it'll take you to our website, introduce you to all of our tools that we actually manufacture right here, as well as our workshops, both in person and online. Good luck.